Hear the question brought before YHWH this morning. YHWH, examine the world news at this hour in light of Bible prophecy. The lead verse drawn is Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 4. Moreover you will say to them, this is what YHWH declares. That is the key. It does not open with a headline. It opens with a declaration, and every other word in this reading must stand under that authority. The question is not whether the day is important. The question is whether the drawn word speaks, and the drawn word begins by speaking. The news this morning is full of conflict. There are missile and drone strikes in Kyiv, missile launches from North Korea, airstrikes in Myanmar, raids in Pakistan, a sword attack in Sweden, and hijacked vessels off Yemen and Somalia. There are judgments handed down in China, Hong Kong, Australia, and India. There are movements of peoples, with deportees arriving in Liberia from the United States. There are natural troubles, an earthquake in Peru, a mine collapse in the Central African Republic, and an Ebola outbreak growing in the Congo. There are leaders returning or chosen in Bangladesh and Cameroon. There are land disputes in the West Bank and missile tests near islands claimed by Japan. There are economic warnings concerning Iran and an easing of tariffs on beef. We do not move through these events one by one, and the drawn text does not move through them one by one. It speaks over them as one testimony. Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 4 sets the key. The day is not random noise. It is addressed. The drawn text carries leadership most heavily, and the movement of peoples is close behind it. Land and economy are carried moderately. Legal judgment and natural events are weaker. Conflict is the faintest point. Where the correspondence is faint, we say so plainly. The text does not give a clear word of fire over any battle today, and it does not give a clear word of earthquake or plague. The absence is a result. It tells us where the text is not offering a direct handle, and that restraint is part of the reading. Genesis chapter 15, verse 18 reminds us of the covenant. In that same day YHWH made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your offspring have I given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. That is a land word. The news carries land disputes in the West Bank and disputed islands near Japan. The drawn text holds land and territory in its own covenant vocabulary, though moderately. It does not say that a boundary is settled today. It says that land belongs to covenant, not to the loudest claim. It does not map the day's borders. It maps the covenant. Ezekiel chapter 23, verse 33 speaks of a cup. You will be filled with drunkenness and sorrow, with the cup of appalling and desolation, with the cup of your sister Samaria. That cup is close to the judgments in the news, the fraud sentence in China, the subversion conviction in Hong Kong, the spy charge in Australia, and the court panel in India. Yet the drawn text carries legal judgment only moderately. We may hear the cup as a warning, not as a verdict on any earthly court. We do not identify the cup with any one nation. We hear the same vocabulary of desolation. Psalms chapter 21, verse 9 says, YHWH will swallow them up in his anger, and the fire will devour them. It is a severe word. It sits over the conflicts of the day. But the draw carries conflict only faintly, one of the weakest points. So the text does not turn those battles into a direct prophecy. It gives us a God who is not silent about fire, but the correspondence is faint. Fire in the text is not a headline. It is a warning about what follows when covenant is refused. Isaiah chapter 47, verse 15 says, this will they be to you with whom you have labored, even your merchants, from your youth. They will wander every one to his quarter, none will save you. That word speaks to the economic warnings and to the weakness of commerce. The news carries threats of economic warfare against Iran and an easing of tariffs on beef. The drawn text carries economy only moderately. It warns that merchants and markets will not deliver. None will save you. That is the pastoral caution inside the affirmative reading. 1 Chronicles chapter 28, verse 18 speaks of the altar of priestly incense, refined gold by weight, and the pattern of the chariot of the cherubim, that spread out their wings, and covered the ark of the covenant of YHWH. That word does not match any headline. It anchors the reading at the altar of reception. The priestly work is not to chase the news. It is to receive the declaration and to hold the day before YHWH. Now the mathematical reading says yes. It is a strong anomaly, and every gate passes. The affirmative weight is near total at 99.8%, with the negative at 0.2% and no unresolved reading. But I must say plainly what this yes is about. It scores the drawn text against the whole body of Scripture. It verifies no event in the news, and it answers nothing about this day's news. The yes is a pattern reading, not a prophecy certificate. The identity, inheritance, and priesthood markers are present together above the baseline. The favor reading is affirmative. The convergence is strong. The anomaly detection E-value is elevated and the triple convergence standard is met, but these are not evidence about the world. They are evidence about the text. The lead verse remains the key. This is what YHWH declares. I name one tension in this reading. The lead verse is a declaration, but the chapter around it carries a hard word of turning and falling. The numeric yes is affirmative, but the text also carries the cup and the fire. I do not soften the caution. An affirmative pattern does not mean the day is safe. It means the day is addressed by YHWH. The caution is not a contradiction. It is the weight inside the declaration. So we answer the question. WH. Examine the world news in light of Bible prophecy. The reading is affirmative with a pastoral warning. The text speaks heavily where leadership and the movement of peoples appear. It speaks moderately where land, economy, and legal judgment appear. It speaks faintly where conflict and natural events appear. The day's headlines are not a second scripture. The drawn text is the scripture. It does not certify the news. It calls the news to stand under the declared word of YHWH. The answer is yes, but only in this sense. The text provides a pattern of declaration, covenant, judgment, and mercy that is strong enough to receive the day, and the day is not outside YHWH's address. The altar of reception remains the place where the priestly voice says, with Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 4, this is what YHWH declares. The lead verses drawn in this altar of reception session were Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 4, Isaiah chapter 47, verse 15, 1 Chronicles chapter 28, verse 18, Psalms chapter 21, verse 9, Genesis chapter 15, verse 18, Ezekiel chapter 23, verse 33. 94 further verses were drawn in this session. This concludes today's interpretation at the altar of reception.